Does anyone else remember the 2008 movie Death Race about a bunch of prisoners killing each other with modded cars? Because I used to love watching that movie. Not because it was good, no, that would make me clinically insane if I called that movie good. I loved it because it was so stupid and so bad. Turns out it was actually inspired and is somewhat of a reboot of Death Race 2000. And Death Race 2000 stars Sylvester Stallone just 1 year before his big break. It's crazy to think that Rocky would come out just 1 year later in 1976, and not only would it be the highest grossing movie of that year, but it would also launch Sylvester Stallone into stardom. I can't say his name, okay? I tried, but I just can't. So with all of that, let's kick things off. This movie doesn't wait to show you what are supposed to be super awesome race cars with their super cool drivers and their super sexy navigators. I know it's 1975, but man, it's hard to take these cars seriously. Our lovely drivers for this event are the following: Calamity Jane and her navigator Pete in their weird bowl-looking car.
I said, oh, jump scare.
Matilda the Hun and her navigator Herman the German in their... Well, do I need to explain that one? Don't worry, she dies, and it's very funny when it happens. Nero the hero and his navigator Cleopatra in their... I don't know what this is, honestly. Machine Gun Joe and Myra in their pointy knife and machine gun car. Then our main man Frankenstein and his new navigator Annie in their lizard car. Now, apparently in this universe, there was a world crash in 1979, and so Mr. President created this sporting event known as Death Race. Somehow, it became the biggest sporting event in history and united the entire world, and that's mostly because of Frankenstein. This story mainly revolves around Frankenstein and also a resistance that is trying to topple the government to get rid of the Death Race. Which is hilarious, because all Death Race is a race where you drive a topless tacky car, get points for running people over, and old people are worth the most. There are no rules, and you can kill the other drivers. Like, this makes zero sense, but I'm here for it. Now, this movie is from Roger Corman, which means it was made on a small budget with a small crew. The plot is kinda all over the place and not very coherent, which makes this movie confusing and fun to watch at the same time.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
So the race kicks off and we learn a little more about Frankenstein. When he's introduced, we're told that he's had multiple injuries from dozens of crashes, which includes a robot arm that can shift in 1/20th of a second. Turns out this is all a lie because he tears off his face mask to reveal that he's just a normal dude. I did appreciate how the 2008 Death Race kept that plot point, because it makes for an interesting mythos about a man who can't die and keeps winning and winning each time he comes back. After we learn that Frankenstein is a giant fraud, Machine Gun Joe runs over some random construction worker and is the first one to score some points. We are treated to some car bullfighting from Calamity Jane. Good to see her stupid car has at least one dumb fan, until she kills him, that is. Then a bunch of old people are wheeled out by some mean doctors, and instead of running the senior citizens over, Frankenstein runs over all the doctors. This is followed by a guy on the news saying this about it.
Which only goes to show that even the fearsome Frankenstein has a 100% red-blooded American sense of humor.
The resistance subplot finally kicks in, and when they bait Nero the hero to run over a baby, it turns out to be a bomb and blows him to smithereens. Then Machine Gun Joe runs a guy over because he's hanging up a Frankenstein sign instead of one for him, and it's kind of funny that Stallone is playing a guy who has a massive ego right before he got his own massive ego. This concludes the first leg of the race, so all the drivers stop to rest and end up having a scene that is just complete nudity. At the same time, a fangirl of Frankenstein catches him in the hallway, and she says a bunch of cryptic stuff to him before he rudely leaves. He goes to his room, and wearing just his mask and gloves, he then dances with Annie. Poor Simone Griffith. Look how hard she's on her tiptoes while she's dancing with Frankenstein. The next morning, the next stage of the race kicks off, and Frankenstein, being the rascal that he is, baits a race official onto the road and then runs him over. Shortly after, the fangirl from the night prior is standing on the road dressed in white while her cult stands off to the side. Yeah, in this universe, Frankenstein also has a cult of believers that want to sacrifice themselves so he can guarantee his win. In a moment I honestly didn't think was going to happen, he ran her over, giving her what she wanted, which was to be run over by a weird man in a lizard car. We cut back to our resistance people and they're setting up a trap for Frankenstein that involves a lookalike, but then when Frankenstein comes through, he just kills the lookalike and then races off. The resistance doesn't try to stop him, doesn't ambush him, and it's never brought up or explained what this plan was exactly. Frank has Annie drive and Machine Gun Stallone runs over a fisherman in a riverbed. In the most Looney Tunes scene, Matilda is being chased by Calamity Jane because Matilda killed Calamity's navigator. So the resistance sets up a detour sign in a fake tunnel with a curtain on the edge of a cliff. And since Matilda is such an idiot, she falls for it and goes flying off the cliff to a fiery end. For some reason, a kid who is playing stick and hoop, which was this still a thing kids did in 1975? But with Annie driving, Frank tells her to run the kid over, but because she's not a murderous psychopath, she swerves at the last minute. All the racers stop for a second time, and someone forgot to tell Stallone that he didn't have to go this hard with the acting because he's just licking what is either whipped cream or icing straight off his fingies. After eating like a slob, Machine Gun Joe makes an attempt at murdering Annie, but Frank steps in and gives Rocky a taste of his own medicine. The final part of the race kicks off the next day, and Calamity Jane, knowing that the resistance is trying to kill them all, decides to chase a group of bikers right into a minefield. She explodes, leaving only Joe the Finger Licker and Frankie the Lizard Lover in the race. Now, throughout the race and resistance shenanigans, this old lady and this rebel guy have been hinting at a big final plan that they cooked up. What that big plan turns out to be is the rebel guy in a plane shooting very poorly at Frank. Frankenstein then drugs Annie, and then a random white car with a driver dressed like Frankenstein again starts to chase them. Randomly, it just hits an incline, flips over, and then explodes for no reason. Then the plane that was shooting at them just runs into one of the mountains and explodes. I'm pretty sure the creators of this movie had no idea what this chase was supposed to be because it looks like a bunch of random scenes cut together, and I kinda love how stupid it is. Annie wakes back up and yells at Frankenstein, but he explains that he knocked her out so she wouldn't try to stop him, but also that he thinks that she loves him. She immediately tries to kill him before they pull over, and then she tells him that she does in fact love him. All this leads to a reveal that Frankie Boy also wants to kill Mr. President just like the Resistance, but he wants to do it with a grenade hand. They make up and make out a little bit before they speed off after Machine Gun Joe. After a high-speed chase and an oil slick maneuver, Annie pulls off Frankenstein's grenade hand and uses it to explode Machine Gun Joe. Okay, now I'm gonna do my best to explain how this movie ends, but bear with me. Frankenstein pulls up to the most pathetic finish line I have ever seen. I mean, for the biggest sporting event in history, this is just sad. As Frankenstein is walking up to the stage, the old lady pops out of the crowd and shoots Frankenstein, even though she wants Mr. President dead, and they were literally standing right next to each other. But it turns out it wasn't Frankenstein. It was actually Annie dressed in the costume. The real Frankenstein is still in the car, and he just drives it into the stage and kills the president. And then everyone cheers and claps as he stands out of his car half naked. He marries Annie and then becomes the new Mr. President. And so President Frankenstein ends the death race once and for all, and the movie ends with him and Annie driving away. Death Race 2000 definitely shows that it's a relic from 1975. And even though this movie is full of stupidity, I still think it has a little bit of charm. It's a masterpiece in its own terrible way, but it also feels like the people who made this did the best they could with their tiny budget, which thankfully earns Death Race 2000 a spot in So Bad, It's Good. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to check out my video on the movie Pixels, a very bad video game movie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below what movie you'd like to see me cover in the future.